to this.
What was that word?
Mizzle. It's the
mizzle?
Gary Word's mystical mizzle.
Welcome to the Gary Word Trail Running Podcast. Three blokes talking about trail running out here in Gary Word, near Halls Gap. I suppose this podcast is designed for anyone who's into running, into trail running, probably more specifically. And we're doing a 12, maybe 13, maybe 14 episode series on breaking down each section of the Grampians Peaks Trail. There's a race that's just kicked off in the last couple of years that goes the full 162 kilometres. But us here as locals of the area, we thought we could maybe provide a resource for anyone who wants to come to the area to do some running, that sort of stuff. Really sort of we can break down each part of it, give some advice on running. Not that we've got any real expertise. But I'm here with Pat and Mark. My name's Phil, and we're going to run you through it over the course of these episodes. So we're on to episode 2 right now.
Yeah, so my name's Pat, and welcome everyone. As Phil said, this is episode 2, so we're going to be covering the second part of the 12-part trail of the Grampians Peaks Trail. So if you've just, this podcast has somehow hit your socials or your inbox or whatever, and you haven't heard episode 1, I'd probably start at the start, follow us all the way through if you're that way inclined.
Yeah, Mark here, and today we're talking about the second section of the trail, which is the hardest section, the hardest of the 12 sections, and it's got so many unique features. So looking forward to discussing and giving people a better appreciation of this space. So I guess the three of us, I know we went out in I think mid-November, and actually, one of the things we were aware, we're all racing on this section of race during the GPT 100 miler. And we were aware that this is the hardest section. There's a sort of nearly 20 kilometres. I know we'll go through the stats in a minute. But really just doing that reconnaissance to try and understand. And we went for a run probably 2 weeks prior to the event just to really familiarisation. And I tell you what, that gave me a lot of confidence and really, really assisted come event day, just understanding what was coming up and what was ahead.
I think that's been a common theme with the people who've done well in the first and second year of the Grampians Peaks Trail 100 or the miler, is that they have got familiar with the trails beforehand. And I know, say, Mike Dunstan, who won the miler in the first year, he had actually run the entire trail, a lot of it he'd run multiple times. I think that familiarity went a long way.
Well, given that though, Pat, can you explain to me then why you two haven't even finished it?
Okay, we'll get to that later. We'll get to that later. But getting, not that I'm trying to divert, but let's get back to some stats. So this second sector of the GPT miler, it's 19.6 kilometres long, and we're talking about starting at the Gar trailhead and finishing at the Mount Difficult road crossing.
So you're about 30 kilometres north of Halls Gap for those people that want to know here. So you've done the first 16 Ks, and then that Troopers Creek's based on Roses Gap Road. It's a pretty good access to parking there. Big spot. There is no phone reception though, in terms of then starting off for this section.
I should also mention that when we talk about Troopers Creek, it is a little bit confusing up there because there's the Troopers Creek campground car park, which is about 200 metres down the road from the Gar trailhead.
You're very close.
Car park.
But not quite there.
So if you're meeting someone, keep it in mind. Gar trailhead car park is the typically the one if you're trying to access the GPT trail.
I think last year there was there's a really good aid station there, and it was a stonking hot day, so there was people spraying you down with water. But I suppose that was the start of this section, because what we're talking about is, the first, is it what, sort of 10 or so kilometres? No, how many kilometres is it, this uphill section at the start?
The uphill section, I think, is, about 8 kilometres.
8 kilometres long. And it really does feel like you just keep going up. And it's a stunning bit of scenery. There's some really technical sections on it. But I've run it a number of times, and I'm amazed at how it just keeps going.
And I mean, over the course of this this whole section, you're actually gaining 1,036 metres of elevation, which is a big run by any standard, but as a part of the bigger race, this is a huge sector.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but there's just something about a vertical kilometre that feels really, really rewarding. And the fact you're getting one in this section, it probably just does highlight the difficulty and length of what you're running through, from going from Troopers Creek through to the Mount Difficult Road.
And maybe if we are talking about that first 8 kilometre where you're just climbing up and up and up, it's a pretty interesting part of the trail and changes a lot from season to season.
Yeah, there's a couple of good waterfalls in there, and some nice scenery, and as you said, it's really dry here at the moment. In the area, we've just experienced some pretty heavy bushfires, and when we're out running, day to day, you can really notice how dry it is. But probably one of the better times to go, I would say, is in that kind of spring period where you've got all these wildflowers out, and some water flowing, and it really is pretty stunning.
It is. It's amazing. Spring and wildflower season is definitely one of my favourite times in the park. In terms of this, the Troopers to go, this is one of those sections when they were designing what the trail was going to look like. There was an existing trail that went a little bit further north from Beehive Falls car park and linked up to Mount Difficult, so existing trail network there. What they did, these features are, it's called the Waterfalls of Gar. So this is the start of this section. It's about I think it's 2.7 kilometres, and you go to 3 different waterfalls. Now, at this time of year with not much water, you're not going to see much water coming off them, but after an inch of rain, you've got these big sandstone holding periods, and it's all runoff because there's no ground moisture or no soil to soak up the moisture. And I've been up there, and the waterfalls are literally landing on your head after an inch of rain. It's an amazing experience, but it changes for depending on the season and the conditions.
And it's great running on a hot day when you're running through there, and you can splash your face and stop for a little dip even. Take your shoes and socks off.
And I mean, in the right season, I think there's always something trickling over the waterfalls. It certainly stops for a lot of the summer period and doesn't really get started probably until you hit winter again. But certainly, as Mark said, like if you get, I don't know, an inch or more of rain and you have the chance to get out there within the hours after or even the next morning, it is worth travelling to do this run.
Yeah, definitely. And the whole, we talk about that first K of the climb in this section. There is amazing day walks and amazing links. So you've got the Peaks Trail, which goes up, but you've also got all these other little offshoots and side sort of quests or summits that you can do that are amazing. I don't know, Phil, have you want to talk about experience up Biggs Bluff or getting to the summit of Gar?
Yeah, I mean, it's as we sort of talk about this place as being a bit of a playground, and GPT itself, like the Grampians Peaks Trail, has had a lot of exposure and that sort of stuff. But yeah, as you said, there are a lot of these extra summits and loops and bits and pieces that you can explore. There's 162 Ks of GPT, but there's got to be hundreds, thousands of kilometres of extra trails. So often you can sort of head on up to another kilometre here or there, and you get a really, really good view from sort of Gar and a few of these peaks.
Sort of the one that I started on quite a bit when I moved here was going up the GPT, and you get to an intersection where you can then head towards Beehive Falls, and it just takes you across this really cool plateau. You've got this amazing cliff on your right with a feature mark. What's it called?
Oh, the Witch's Hat.
The Witch's Hat, that's right. Yeah. You're just looking up at these caves above you, awesome rocks. And then before you actually get to Beehive Falls, you can actually loop back on a bit of an older trail to loop it back to the GPT again.
I know, Paddy, you and I went out and sort of connected Gar and Beehive Falls, and we actually did a loop back into some of the stage 1 area last week, which ended up being about 25 k's. But you know, that was a fantastic day out, and I've had some pretty amazing experiences too. You know, I know I've been up, headed up Gar from Troopers, spent almost the entire run under cloud and fucking mizzle. Got up to this.
What was that word?
Mizzle.
What's
It's the
mizzle?
Gary Word's mystical mizzle. It's like not quite rain. It's not mist either. It's like you're getting wet, but it's not quite rainy. It's mizzle.
Okay,
It's
all
not
right.
raining. It just
That's
exists.
cool. I
Mizzle.
thought
I don't know. It's, you can. I don't have my thesaurus out, but
I'm adding it to mine.
Yeah.
The anyway, getting to so totally no views. Getting to so it's like they're amazing views, by the way, at the summit of Gar. It's a very, very rewarding summit to get to. So it's about a K off the Peaks Trail, but very, very worthwhile. Making the extra 2K journey if you're up out that way. Anyway, got to the summit and all under cloud. But as you get to the summit, the cloud had literally lifted at the escarpment. So the summit's on the sort of edge of the escarpment, and you kind of just punch through, and then you just had the clear skies. So you're in cloud at the summit, just opens up to the views out heading out west, and just one of those amazing Gary Word experiences, really.
I feel like I'm always saying it, but like even on the shittiest days, you just end up with these windows of beautiful weather, beautiful scenes. Quite often the inclement weather, the mizzle, kind of that creates a scene that's incredible sometimes. You just, it comes when you least suspect it.
Sounds like if Snoop Dogg were to be a trail runner, he'd be loving this mizzle. But then, I mean, I'm sure we've all had the experiences. I remember one time I ran through the night, and anyone prior to that, I'd never run through the night and seen sunrise. And everyone says that you get this new wave of energy come through, when you get the sunrise. I remember that particular morning, there was no sunrise. There was just, probably only a metre or two's visibility in front of my face. It was just raining. It was cold. It was horrible. So there are occasions where you get the challenging climate as well.
Yeah.
So when you did that run, you actually set off and you're looking at you'd run this northern section of the picture, but from memory, you had probably underestimated this section of the trail in terms of hydration and nutrition for that run, and the what you were aiming to do. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose. I mean, I've been out twice to try and do the end to end just on my own, and one time I got pretty cooked. It was on that first kind of. The first rock slab and in the first stage of the GPT, which in the last episode you would have heard about, where we talked about getting cooked from underneath, and you've got the heat coming up from the rock, and I think this was only a 26, 27 degree day, but it was direct sunlight, which really sort of says what people went through last year in the GPT when it was sitting at 35, 37 degrees.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe I can make a few comments there.
Yeah.
So last year, attempting the GPT Miler, this section, the second section from Gar Trailhead, was the one that wrecked most people.
Yep.
And it wrecked me as well. Like, it really took me a good 12 hours to recover from this section through massive dehydration, even though I think I drank like about 5 litres of fluids through this section, still got massively dehydrated just because there was just heat radiating from all of these rocks. You're trying to walk up these beautifully formed steps, by the way. Like, it's actually really well manicured on this uphill stint.
Yeah.
But like, the heat was just incredible.
How many litres of water were you carrying? What was your setup?
I was carrying 3.5 litres of water, and I was able to access another 1.5 along the trail.
You're talking bladder and a couple of bottles, flasks?
Yeah, so I actually had 2 litres in the backpack,
Yep.
in my in the bladder at the back. I had 2 500 mils on my chest, which were drink mix as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then I actually had another 500 mils stashed in my backpack that was another drink mix. And then I was able to refill at a few points throughout. And maybe we can cover all the refill points towards the end.
Yep.
Just before we move on to the broad length of the trail, one thing I would like to just outline is I reckon it's nearly one of my favourite. We are talking about moving north to south here, which was the direction of the trail it was intended to be built. So when it first opened, hikers could only book it from north to south. That's changed now. You can do it both ways. But this is the way we're talking people through it. But one of my favourite sections of trail is actually the descent back from Gar down to the intersection with Briggs Bluff. And you've got this about 3K. It's probably it's a descent, but it's only a couple of degrees, to be maybe 5 degrees at max. But it's basically this technical ridgeline running, and you get this amazing flow over. And it is a really, really cool section of trail. So if people are out to do a day trip like that, up to Gar and back is a fantastic option. It's about 18 Ks and other loop options there as well.
I think there's a couple of segments for the segment junkies out there. If you're going up from Gar Trailhead, I think the first couple of Ks is don't go chasing waterfalls.
That's right.
On the way up, and then on the way back down, because I think you're moving too fast. Is the reverse of that. If you want to pick off a few segments, they're very enjoyable ones. But maybe we can talk through like the technicality of the trail for those that haven't run it before. I mentioned before on the uphill, I do think it's incredibly sculpted, like heaps of stone steps that have been specifically carved, put into place. In between the steps up, the trail's actually quite approachable, I would say. Not too technical.
I'd agree with that, and also it kind of levels out the playing field, I think, a little bit. No matter how fit you are, you're going to have to walk up some of these sections. I think there are big, as Pat was saying, big stone steps. You can hustle up there, but it's gonna keep you humble. There's no one's blazing up this thing. So you can sort of enjoy it. And I think when we were racing, this was a sort of a part that I knew we were coming up to, and so I took the time to rehydrate, eat some food, make sure that I used those steps and going a bit slower to get ready for when we hit the top, and then you can start, trucking along through some winding trails and some a bit more flowing section.
Yeah, I had the poles out all for the I just really wanted to save the legs for the rest of the event, and so I just had the poles out the whole time up these steps, which for what I'm doing really helped me.
I know about 6K from the trailhead from Troopers Creek is the hiker camp, the Gar hiker camp, and I reckon that the design and build of the hiker camp itself is pretty amazing. It's kind of set in this sort of rock step establishment. It's got a couple of wooden seats built in, and these views,
banana lounges. They're
banana
great.
Lounges. Yeah. The views looking out over sunset. So you're kind of looking west. Out of the range from nearly the top of the range, and it's a pretty spectacular sight for those wanting to hike and camp, I think.
Yeah, I think it's among my favourite of the hiker camps, like throughout the whole of the Grampians Peaks Trail. It's incredible. You just wake up, take a few steps, you're looking out west at this most amazing view, and it's quite often very, very quiet when I've camped there before.
Yeah, it's quite grammable.
What was that one?
It's grammable.
Oh,
Yeah, it's good for the grams.
Grammable.
You know, there's banana lounges. I think that's the Tourism Victoria picture of choice, isn't it, nowadays, of a couple of hikers sitting on those wooden banana lounges perched on the rock.
Yeah, once the mizzle is gone, it's quite grammable.
Yeah, that's pretty cute.
I reckon the mizzle's very grammable, but that's just my personal grammable preferences.
Yeah.
How many followers you got?
And what about in the event itself, you don't quite get to the peak of Gar. You turn off, and you've got a bit of a techie downhill section after that.
I really like that section. I think it's quite fun. It is techie. You got to think about every footstep. But it is a time to, and I think I ran it once from memory with through the at the Wonderland run was one of the first times I ran this section. And I hadn't really been through this and didn't have much trail running experience at the time, or even racing. I sort of stuck my eyes on this bloke who looked like he knew what he was doing, and so I was like, sweet, I'll just stick behind him. And the two of us sort of started really trucking through this section. So it sort of taught me that you could pick up some speed and you could run through it. He was a much better trail runner than I was, and I think he lost me. But it's a fun spot. It is techie, but you can run it.
Yeah, and that downhill goes for 1.5 K or so, and then you end up on this ridge that then continues pretty much all the way down to just before you cross the Mount Difficult Road again. And a lot of people struggle with this ridge, particularly after the GPT event. Definitely heard a lot of people complaining about the rocks on this section.
Well, it's almost like you're running. I know there's different sections, but it just in my memory, having run it now a few times, it's almost like you've got a 10K of running off camber on about a 10-15% off camber. So it's kind of facing west, the slope, if that makes sense. Is that
Meaning,
where you're running?
So your right leg has to be longer.
Your
than
right
the
leg has to be longer than the left. And it just feels like 10K of continuous. I know it's not. Like, you've got little ups and downs, some amazing sections, but that's just the memory in there. It does go for a long time.
Yeah, there are a few rock faces I remember that have that kind of, sort of that 10% kind of gradient on them, and sort of running across it, and you can sort of see where you enter into the trail at the end of it, like when you sort of come out onto these rock slabs, where you've got that gradient, and your right leg is sort of growing a little bit, and then you can sort of see. Actually, it's not a bad one to do at night time, because you can see the little reflective arrows pretty well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also not so much of an issue during the event, because I think they mark it very well. But in non-event times, it is sometimes tricky to navigate during the day. You do lose those little markers a bit. We should make a comment though. Once you're on that ridge line, somewhere along there, it's actually 12.5 Ks after you leave the Gar Trailhead car park. You come across this pretty intense little climb.
Yeah, that is a good climb, that one.
Yeah.
Given where it is from the trailhead and how much further you got to go, I think I don't know. I'd love to know if people were actually running it during this, because it's a fair percentage. It'd have to be 20%. I'm not sure. It's steep though.
Oh, I mean, for bragging rights, it's got to be 35 or 40%. As we get older,
it's pretty much vertical.
Yeah, as we get older, the hill gets steeper.
But after that, it's just this consistent sort of ridge that you're running along. Sometimes you sort of run just underneath the ridge, which you have some amazing, cool rocks towering above you. Then you pop back on top of it, and then you've got this climb sort of towards the end of this ridge section to actually just get back up to the level of the Mount Difficult Road just before you come and do the crossing. And that climb goes for about a kilometre, just in case you hadn't done enough climbing already on this section.
And as we said at the start, this is a pretty brutal section, especially if you're trying to race it. At this point, you've now got, quite a few kilometres in the legs. If it's hot, you are starting to experience, dehydration. You're starting to try and dial in your nutrition, and you really you got a lot of running ahead of you, regardless of what distance you're doing. But you've got a lot of kilometres in the legs now. So each one of these climbs in the middle of this segment does bite a bit. If you're trying to tick off some Ks in good pace, this isn't your baby.
Yeah, and then 2Ks out from the end of this section, it does sort of level off a bit.
Yeah.
And you've done all your climbing by that point. And maybe we could just comment about the fastest times on this section, which I can see Phil is currently holding 7th place.
Oh, what?
With 2 hours and 16 minutes. The fastest is 2 hours and 8 minutes. And that is Steve Buchanan.
Back in 2022.
Yeah, back in 2022. Yeah. And our fastest female time, Artemis the Huntress. It's a bit of an alias there, 2:39, which is certainly a lot faster than I've done that segment.
No, I did see those two, Simone and Caitlin. Yeah, we were talking about this, this morning during the run. But I had a great time on the 50k race when Simone and Caitlin passed me by, and I could watch them just battling it out, because they came first and second in the 50k, and I sort of had a front seat to some excellent to watch some excellent running, and see those two try and get the top position.
And what about you, Mark? What was your experience in the solo stage at last year's event?
So I'd kind of got through to the first aid stage. And I know you, Paddy, dropped Phil and off, because the 50k and the day one of the stage solo, the same. They start at the same time, and you kind of run that through, and you kindly dropped us off at the start line. And I remember saying to you at the start of running, if I get through the first stage under 2 hours, I'm going too quick. So I got there. I was probably a little bit under 2 hours.
Yeah,
so
well under 2 hours.
I got obviously a little bit excited. But anyway, we're taking off, and I was hoping to sort of do this section in about 3 hours during the stages, is what I'd planned. And I was off, but I knew it was going to be hot, and I knew it was going to be hard. So I was just about heat management and just not going out. I was trying to, sort of just try to make sure I didn't get above sort of high zone 2, because I knew it was long and we still got one section to go. But as I was running up, I kind of got to that, what we call the witch's hat, so I was about 4k up, and I looked behind me, and I know Kelly Emerson, the winner of the 2023 run, or the 2023 miler, was part of the stage relay this year. That's won the 2024 event. Anyway, so behind me, and I'm like, how, like, a few hundred meters behind, and I'm like, it'd be pretty cool if, she's obviously going to come past. I'm like, pretty cool if she could, like, drag me round to the end of this really tough section. And anyway, she sort of caught up to me at the Gar hiker camp, a couple of Ks. And I'm like, okay, do you mind if I just sort of try and tag on the band? She's like, no, it'd be nice to have the company. So she actually carried me through to the aid state, and it was so hot and so hard. So that was fantastic. It was really nice running that section, which is quite hard, just with someone else and sort of having someone pacing and guiding me through. So it was quite a good experience. I'd prepped it to be the hardest section nearly the hardest section of the run, or the hardest segment. It was really nice sort of having that company. I know we passed a couple of people that had obviously gone out way too hard because of the heat, and was sort of struggling a little bit. But that was good.
And looking at your time, Mark, you finished with a handy time of 2:43 for that section, which certainly is fast when I look at my times on the miler, which I'm not on the leaderboard, so I don't think we'll go through that at the moment. I think that's a pretty good summary of section 2 for the day. I think if you're out there running it by yourself, just be prepared, particularly if it's warm weather. Just take heaps of fluids with you, more than you think.
Yeah, that's something. Every time I've done this section, I'll usually chuck an extra jelly in, or an extra, a couple of jelly snakes or something, a little bit extra water, and I always end the run with nothing left. And I'm really stoked I took a little bit extra, and almost wish every single time I took even more.
So I think it's actually a good segue. We haven't spoken about snakes yet, Phil, and it's funny that you've mentioned snakes, because that is your area of expertise.
Of the non-edible variety.
Has anyone seen snakes on this section?
I've not seen any snakes on this section.
No.
I can't remember seeing a snake on this section either, actually.
But interesting, I'm not sure what correlation this has, but the go when we do know recently some pretty significant bushfire impacts has happened further south, which we'll talk to for future episodes. But this area was actually burnt in 2014. There's quite a significant bushfire in this area. Now, this section around sort of Mount Difficult, and take this with a bit of a grain of salt, but from my understanding, the fire severity was so hot, it almost like it wasn't on the scale, needed a new rating for this fire severity. And so I think it's been 10 years post that fire, and whether it still just needs, that the time for the ecosystem and the natural environment in this area to rebuild. So we probably don't have that diversity that is usually there built back yet. So some of the reptile and the compared to some of the other areas down in terms of number of snake sightings, I assume that's why the system hasn't rebuilt from that 2014, the impacts that 2014 fire yet.
Yeah, I know when you've mentioned, Mark, before, that because of the 2014 fires, there's less snakes up there. It has given me a bit of a sense of confidence. I don't know if it's a false sense of confidence, but I'm happy to have that placebo anyway.
It's a real strength when you're trail running. It's just a bit of complacency, I'll be fine, I shouldn't worry about these things.
I think we'll talk about this morning's trail run perhaps in the next episode.
I reckon one thing, because we did talk about hydration and the importance of hydration and the length of this, but I think it's important to note, that really across the 20 Ks, the real source of water is at the hiker camp. So there's a 30,000 litre tank there. Now, during the event, that's not to be used, but if you're out there on a personal run, doing a run, I would almost, 6K in, a really, really smart decision is to reload your water at that hiker camp, I think, for this section.
Yeah, and I know the advice during the race is to not use that, because it does rely on rainfall, and therefore if everybody is going through and filling up, then all of a sudden there's not going to be anything for the end-to-end hikers or the people that are running it throughout the year. So it's encouraged not to use it, but I think if you're running out there and it's a hotter day, particularly outside of the event times, I'd really consider restocking, or try to drink as much as you possibly can before you get to the hiker camp, and then restock, knowing that it's tank water. I'm not a doctor, but I'd probably look into, I certainly use some of those purification tablets. I don't know if it's covering the right things. I can't really comment from a medical perspective, but I take the decision to always fill up my stuff there.
Yeah, I think all three of us have drunk from the tanks. I don't think any of us have had an issue, but
it is non-potable water though.
Yeah. We're not.
Yeah.
You were saying, Pat, before about with hydration, you've got your drink mix and that sort of stuff. I mean, probably the use of electrolytes in making sure that you can absorb the water as well. Probably a good call. I'm not sure. Everyone's got their own system and their own thoughts on this, but I really like having some sort of powder or something with me to mix in with some of the water, just to get some of that salt and sugar back in.
Yeah, particularly I think if it's going to be, say, part of the miler, you are going to be out there. I am looking at it now. I was out there for 3 hours and 36 minutes just on this
Should try and run faster.
sector. I know, yeah. Maybe the next event.
Yeah.
I'll try a bit
Maybe
harder.
that's the issue.
But
Take less water, run faster.
But I think it's a long time, like in the heat.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think you're going to come out well the other side.
You could watch like a full Gladiator movie or something in that time, you know?
That's you're an ideas man, Phil. So I think, as Phil said, electrolytes are important. Just make sure you've got some energy for that section as well. Like, it's a long time between aid stations during the event, from a duration perspective, whichever way you run it. So, it's good advice.
I'm guilty. I ran out of water during the race and was just completely dry. And,
We'll talk about... your sector 3, I think, in the next episode.
Oh, we can give that a miss.
No, I'm looking forward to it. All right, but I think with that, is there anything else we should mention about sector 2?
No, I think we're good.
We really appreciate our listeners tuning in. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.